The Repast Podcast may include detailed discussions about death, the human body after death, and the medical process that may be sensitive or disturbing to some listeners and viewers. Our goal is to educate and inform with respect and care. We encourage listener and viewer discretion, especially for younger audiences or those who may find these topics emotionally challenging.
You have to love what you do in order to be in the industry for 47 years. What other reason would you have?
Crazy.
Yeah.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Repast Podcast. I'm your host, Brice Green, along with my co-host, Miss India Ramsey. Today, we're here to share with you our theme of the science of the body. Our special guests today are Miss LaTasha Davidson from the Wayne County Medical Examiner's Office and Mr. Wallace Williams of the James Cole Funeral Home. Thank you both for being here with us today. Appreciate you guys. Tasha, I'd like to start with you. Just kind of ask if you would explain your role with the Medical Examiner's Office and what leads your office to be called and respond to a death scene.
So my role is an investigator. I am the eyes and ears of the medical examiner. So my role is to respond to scenes that are suspicious, foul play, trauma, stabbing, shootings, anything, decomps, and we respond, take photos, and just kind of document the scenes for the medical examiner to be able to rule on the cause and manner of death.
Okay. Now, I know it's always going to be different, same way as us at the funeral home, but what does a typical day look like?
So a typical day is coming in, if we have docket, we review the cases that came in the night previous, and we review those with the medical examiner to discuss the methods that need to be done for the autopsy. And then we take calls for hospice deaths, for home deaths, for scene deaths. We respond to those scenes, document the scenes, write the reports, and then start it all over the next day.
What can you share with our listeners and our viewers of what a typical scene looks like when you get there and you say, you know what, this needs to be documented? What type of scene would that look like?
So Wayne County is the largest county in Michigan. So a typical scene, it's usually a lot of people outside with their camera phones. We are responding. The police are on scene. Hopefully the next of kin is on scene. And then we are documenting from outside to inside. We're documenting the body, anything that's suspicious, medications, if it's food in the refrigerator to make sure the person is well nourished, the temperature in the home, what the person is wearing, their medical history, their social history, such as if they smoke or drink. Not that it's a bad thing, but we need to know these things for the autopsy, as well as who was in the home, when were they last seen, and then we document all those things.
Now, along with those scenes that you investigate and you go out and you really take your time and look at the scene and verify all the information, what are some instances where the medical examiner's office would contact the funeral home and say, you know what, we need to bring this case back in for further investigation?
So if the family, the next of kin is notified in Wayne County, if you're 60 years and older, we do not take those scenes. If a person has been in a hospital for an extended amount of time and the doctor is willing to sign that death certificate, we don't take those scenes. It just depends kind of case by case, but usually 60 and older, if the next of kin is on scene, if a primary care physician is available, if the medical history is documented, we don't take those scenes.
Okay. And that's a big one for especially the families that we service, because they always say, well, where's the autopsy? And we have to kind of, as funeral directors in the office, like, mom was 78. She's not going to get an autopsy done. We got to kind of break it down, and we have to try and bring them in and try to put them at ease that, well, with mom being this old, it's going to depend on what her health history was, not an autopsy from the medical examiner's office. Now, LaTasha, what are some of the steps, or what can you explain to our listeners and viewers if somebody passes at home, or if they're at home under hospice? What are the steps they need to take before they contact the funeral home?
So if someone passes at home, if it's through hospice, the hospice nurse will call the medical examiner's office, explain the case, and they will be given a medical examiner's number. That's the number that they give to the funeral home for the body to be picked up. If it's a home death, they need to call the police. The police will come and investigate. And then if it's released, they will give them a medical examiner's number for the funeral home to come to get the body. But the funeral home will not come to get the body unless they have a medical examiner's number.
So it's not all the time that the medical examiner's office has to come out to the home to give that number.
Correct.
The police can just call the office to get that medical examiner's number?
Yes. And then once we give the number, as long as they have the number, they can give that number to the funeral home.
Wallace, I know you've been around the funeral home for a couple years. It's
Just a few.
Just a few. But what are some instances where you found that the funeral home actually has to contact the medical examiner's office and say, I think this person needs to come back?
We've had instances where we've gotten a case from the medical examiner's office, and upon putting it on the table, over 60, taking the clothes off, you find bullet wounds. So then we have to refer it back to the medical examiner. We have to take it back because now it's not a natural death. It's a homicide. So anything like that, anything we see out of the ordinary, we'll send back. They don't like it, but we send them back.
Right, right. But those are that goes back to how you said, Wayne County is the biggest county in the state of Michigan. And funeral directors are almost the second set of eyes for the medical examiner, where we're all working for the same outcome to get the person's loved one laid to rest. But at the same time, we catch some things the medical examiner doesn't. And then when we get information from the medical examiner, what happened? What? So it's almost a team effort of working hand in hand. And now in those situations, like, now Wallace, we had a little conversation at the Michigan Funeral Directors Convention, and the number just stuck with me. And as you've been with I'll let you tell. You've been with the funeral home for how many years?
I've been in embalming for 47 years. So I'm somewhere over 15,000.
15.
It sounds like a lot, but it's not really, because if you divide it by the number, it's like 2 or 3 a day. So it's a lot of days in there. It's a lot of days in there. So, I didn't do as many in my later years, but in the beginning, we did a lot. Mm-hmm. We did a lot. The medical examiner has changed their way of doing it. Now they don't take house calls in. They don't take hospice patients in. All those patients used to go to the medical examiner and had autopsies. So they don't do it like that now. But yeah, 47 years. Many of his person.
Let's see there. Now for 47 years, and then he just up and retires. Well, what kind of nonsense is that?
Well, it got to the point that I thought I've done all I could do, and I wanted to experience some things with the kids and the family and everybody like that. And then one life passed me by, and so I miss it. Right. I'm there. I was there today. So.
Right. Now I said, on behalf of myself and my family, we miss you too.
Yeah. I was there today.
And we appreciated every ounce of those years you were with us. And India, I know you appreciated your your learning times under Wallace and the little techniques and all the teachings that
he's dropped a lot of gems
right?
over the years for sure. Oh yeah, I still hear you in my mind when I'm doing certain cases. Like Wally would do it this way. Wally would tell me to do it this way. Can you remember your first restorative case? Many moons ago.
It's many moons ago. I can't remember the very first one, but I can remember the first big one. Mm-hmm. And it was a gentleman. He got shot at a bar on Oakland Avenue, and he got shot in the face, and everything from the nose down was gone. And Mr. Cook, who was my boss at the time, said, well, we probably won't show this guy, but take a shot at him, see what you can do. So every night after work, I stayed and I worked on him. In 3 days, I was able to show him. So you had to use wire and plaster Paris and wax and all kinds of stuff. Mm-hmm. So I was intrigued. It was something that I wanted to do. It was something I had to do. And it gave me a sense of accomplishment. I was able to do it. And I said, hey, I can do that. Mm-hmm.
And that's why from there on out, all of those hard cases, all of those challenging cases, somebody called Wally. He'll come in and take care of it.
It was because I did it as a challenge, and I did it because it's something I wanted to do, not because I had to do it. And I guess that was my little niche,
But that's that passion for the industry, the passion for the career. Was that, no, I can do this. I can have this person be seen one more time.
Exactly.
I think with this industry in general, it has to be your calling. You have to do it because it's something that you love to do. Because if you don't, you won't last in it. I mean, it's so many variances into this industry. You have to love what you do in order to be in the industry for 47 years. What other reason would you have?
Crazy.
Yeah. That too.
Right. Just a little bit.
Now, LaTasha, I do have a question for you. Going back to the scenes at home. When you go out to a home scene, how do you all determine whether it is suspicious or foul play, or whether it's considered to be a natural cause? What red flags do you get at a home scene to determine that?
Oh, we look for, of course, stab wounds, shootings, if it's drugs on scene. Those are the type of things where we determine. And if it's a decomp. So even if the person is 90 years old, if they're decomp, they have to come in. So those how we determine if it's natural or not. But to piggyback off of what he said, after 60, a natural death, people don't realize that at 60, sometimes the organs can stop and you can have a heart attack. Anything can happen. So people, like he said, like Brice said, that 78, they're wondering why grandma has to come in, but the body stops, the organs, fail. And so we determined that at 60, that's a cutoff for where we determined that the body can stop functioning.
Now, can you explain to our viewers, when they get a death certificate that says pending, what does that mean exactly? And how do you determine a pending death certificate?
So if the case is not straightforward, if it's not someone that drowned, that was stabbed, that was shot, anything that was trauma related, then our doctors issue a death certificate that states pending. And with our medical examiner's office, right now, the death certificates are going out for pending at least 6 months. With children, infants, children under 5, we're going up to a year. So you will be released with a death certificate that states pending, but it could take up to 6 months or a year for the doctor to determine the cause and manner of death.
And then if a family gets a death certificate and they may not agree with what your findings are, how does that work? 'Cause I know you all get calls saying, my mama didn't die from no heart attack. So what happens when you get those conversations? How do you handle that?
So we get a lot of calls that someone passed at the hospital and they're like, oh, it was foul play. We want an autopsy. We recommend, if it's not a medical examiner's case, if it does not meet the criteria, that you get a secondhand opinion from another medical examiner's office. Once we rule that it's pending or what the cause and manner of death is, it is no change in this. This is what our doctors determined. This is what's going on a death certificate. And that's the end of the case. So
if I had a penny for every time I had to have that conversation about a pending death certificate. So
Now, LaTasha, touch on that a little bit too. Where, as far as when a death certificate is pending, what type of testing and pathology is being done behind the scenes that a family may say, this is ridiculous. It's been 4 months. This is getting out of control. But what type of work is actually being done behind the scenes that they'll never see or never really understand to determine that cause of death?
So we have really amazing techs, really amazing doctors. We draw everything from eye fluid, blood, urine. The doctors take samples of the organs. And because we don't have an in-house laboratory, we send all of our samples to Pennsylvania. So that's why it takes the amount of time that it takes. So we take everything from head to toe so that we can rule on the correct cause and manner of death.
And that makes a big difference, because when families have no idea and they just think, well, they're right there on Warren, what are they doing? You can't really explain to them, well, not everything takes place there. Yes, the autopsy took place there, but there's toxicology, there's different testing, there's this, there's that. And families don't really understand the depth of investigation that goes into actually assigning a cause of death. And I'm just glad you're here today to kind of explain that to everybody.
I'm happy you mentioned that toxicology part of it, because I'm curious to know, does toxicology actually determine all the drugs and possibly poisons that are in the blood?
Well, so I'm not a medical doctor, so I can't explain that, give 100%, definite answer, but we also go by the autopsy is a complete picture. So it's our investigation. It's what the doctors find. It's what the medical history. We also order medical records. So it's everything. It's a complete picture. So that's what we rule on from the autopsy. So the toxicology is only going to rule on what the person had in their system, but the medical records could show things. If we find drugs on scene, paraphernalia on scene, all of those go into play when determining the cause and manner of death.
That makes sense. That makes perfect sense.
Now, how does that work? Just with when you get on scene and you do find drug paraphernalia and whatnot, does that get turned over to the police department before the family can enter the home to collect personal property? Because some families will always say, well, they never allowed us in the house. We couldn't even look for insurance papers, or we couldn't look for a driver's license or birth certificate. How does that kind of play out when you do find those scenes with illegal items that are there?
So in a perfect world, the officers will leave things as put. That's not always the case, but things are confiscated by the police, by their evidence tech. We do and hope to get pictures of the items for our doctors to determine, okay, well, the family said this person has always did this type of drugs all their life and we see something differently. So we try to kind of get the pictures so that we can get the complete pictures, but that's not always the case. But it's always turned over to the police. We don't take those items back to our office.
Okay.
LaTasha, are there any religious restraints that you see with cases coming into the medical examiner office that you can't perform an autopsy on?
Yes, if a family requests due to religious preferences to not have a full autopsy, we are able to honor those requests.
Are there multiple types of autopsies performed in Wayne County Medical Examiner's Office?
Yes, so we perform 2 types of autopsies, a full autopsy where a decedent is cut and samples are taken, and then an inspection where the body is just viewed, x-rayed, and maybe blood, urine, and different fluids are taken.
Is that considered toxicology?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, along those lines and along those different inspections and what you can do and you can't do, when you get to a scene and you're trying to determine what type of inspection is going to fit for this case, what types of death kind of automatically go into full autopsy or not necessarily a full autopsy?
So that's determined by the medical examiner.
Okay.
Once I get to the scene, I'm not able to determine based on what I see at the scene if it'll be a full autopsy or an inspection.
Okay. Now, how do you deal with those scenes where you get to the scene and as you pull up and police are there, I'm assuming usually police are there and whatnot, but then you still have to battle through a crowd of 60 people to get to the scene. How are those different from just simply walking into a house where it was a hospice case and you're just issuing a number and making sure everything's verified, you're on your way?
It's definitely very difficult. You know, the scene with a lot of people, the crowd, emotions are high. I try to speak to the notifying officer first, the person who called in the death, and then I try to pick out one person, like who the next of kin is, pull them aside from the crowd, speak to them, get medical history, get social history, last known alive information, have them sign an identification card so that they don't have to come to the medical examiner's office and do the identification. We place them back into the crowd, back behind the police tape, and then we go and do the investigation. But it definitely is difficult because now in the day and age of social media, everybody has their phones out. Everybody's out, they're screaming, they're crying, they're trying to get in to see their loved one. When the body does come out, they're trying to bombard the case, the body, the cars, and so it does get intense.
Now, is that a portion, does that fit into your job description of actually bringing the body out of the residence? Or are you able to pass that along to a different area? So
we have an amazing transport team that arrives on scene. They have really nice Pacifica vans. So it's not, the old school hearse. And they are the ones that brings the body out, put them in the Pacifica, the van, and then they drive off. So I'm able to speak with the officer, speak to the next of kin, see if they have any information, make sure they have the case number to give to the funeral home to pick up their loved one, and then I'm able to leave the scene after the decedent has left.
Okay. Now, have you been in that position where you're looking for that officer to help get anybody off of you, or have you been able to kind of dodge around those trying times?
Yeah. Usually by the time I get on scene, especially if it's one that's high emotion, something that's already on social media, the officers have it pretty well detained. I haven't been to a scene where people are like crowding around. It's multiple police cars. They have it completely blocked off. I'm able to walk right up to the officer, right up to the scene. It's very rarely where we go in our life as investigators or just our safety is in danger.
Once a body is released to the funeral home from the medical examiner's office, what happens next when we get that body into the funeral home?
In our facility, the first thing that's done, the body is logged into a logbook. So they have an actual number that's their number from there on. It's their case number. And the body's then placed on the table. We come in and assess the body. Then we put our embalming outfits on, our PPEs, personal protection. And then we come in and assess what we have to do. And then we start the embalming process, mixing chemicals together. I did bring some chemicals, but I was going to let everybody know, they think that embalming chemical is one chemical. It's several chemicals mixed together. There's probably anywhere between 12 and 20 different chemicals in an embalming chemical. It's not just formaldehyde, because they use them for coloring, they use it for swelling, they use it for jaundice, they use it for all kind of things now. And chemistry is, really, really caught up with biology. And then we proceed to embalm the body. If it's coming from the medical examiner, 99% of the time it's autopsy, which means twice as long as it takes us to do it normally, because not getting into what an autopsy is, but we have to embalm every part of the body separately. We can't do it as a whole, whereas we could if the body was unembalmed. That's it.
We have presents
here.
here.
We have presents. And just to show everybody, embalming chemicals come in several different colors, several different kinds. And they have specific reasons for specific things. So everybody thinks that there's one embalming chemical. We probably have, and this is only half of what was there, and we mix and match. For coloring, for my color is a little different than your color is a little different than your color. Women are a little different. Heavier people are different. People that are emaciated are different. People that are blown or have a lot of edema are different. So you have to mix the fluids up according to that, and then you try to embalm each and every part.
And with being around the industry as long as you have, what are those differences that you've seen over the years from where you would see somebody who was 70 years old, maybe back in the 90s, that came out of the hospital, and then somebody that's 70 years old that came out of the hospital in 2012, and that difference of how we try to explain to families the amount of fluids that they inject into you when you're at the hospital with IV fluids and whatnot, and what that actually does to the body.
As I always say, technology is caught up with biology. And so in 2012, you're 70 years old, you passed, or you were ill, they let you pass. Now they do everything they can to try to save you. So they may pump you full of IV fluids. They may do anything they can. The job at the hospital is to save your life, not to make our job easier. Then when we get it, India and I can tell you, COVID was an absolute nightmare because no one looked like themselves. They pumped them so full of fluids, and they were irrecognizable. And so we have to try then to use all these chemicals to try to take all the fluids back down. Or on the other side, you get somebody that's 70 pounds and you try to build them up because they were 150 in their life. So it's the opposite happens. And so, but nowadays it's much, much more complicated because there's more chemicals, there's more antibiotics, there's more everything. And they don't allow you to die because everybody's scared of getting sued. So they want to do everything they can to save your life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And explain to the listeners and viewers what I know everybody always says, well, when you're at the funeral home, you're you're back in the back and you're breaking people's bones and you're breaking this and you're doing that.
No.
And I asked the family one time, I said, well, where did you hear that from? They said, well, I heard something that said you guys break the rigor. So you break their rigor bone. I said, no, that doesn't happen.
What bone was it?
I said, well, if you can show me a rigor bone, I'll tell you we don't break it. But kind of explain to people what it is that we do in that embalming room and the different stages that a body goes through.
If you can get a body that's from a nursing home or from a house call that has a death that hasn't been too long, they're still warm, everything moves fine. You can bend the arms, you can bend the hands. After about 12, 15 hours, rigor sets in. And when rigor sets in, the muscles set in their place, and they're very hard to break. You can break them. And then after 24 to 36 hours, the rigor goes away. So you can kind of judge how long the body's been gone. But the longer it's been dead, the more cells have died, and the more problems we have with embalming the body. So that's why people say we want to get it as fast as we can and get it in there so we can do something to it, because we can save the natural appearance if we can get to the body in a short amount of time. You know, if you find a body 2 and 3 days old, the body's already start to discolor, it start to blow up, it start to get abscesses, and then they wonder why we can't. My mom doesn't look like she did when she was sick, but she's also been dead for 3 days with the heat on 90. She and I were talking about this in the hallway. She has some cases today, and people don't understand that. So please, I tell everyone, if you got elderly people, check on them every day, because it doesn't take a lot to really give a case to us that's really, really difficult, and then we get blamed for it. Because as my boss used to tell me, Mr. Cook, we can only play the hand that we've been dealt. So we're not miracle workers. We try to be. We think we are, but we try to do the best we can with what we got. And if we put it out, that's pretty much what we think it's going to be. It's very difficult to try to go and take 20 years. And this is what I always tell people. When we get your loved one, she's usually at their worst. You bring me a picture of a wedding that she was at her best. So we've got to take it to 360 degrees from her worst to take it to her best. And it usually doesn't work so well, but we try the best we can.
Now, in those situations, talking about when you get on scene and somebody's been deceased for 3 days and they're sitting in the house and the heat is cranked up to 75 because they're an elderly person, they got to have their warmth. But what does the medical examiner's office do in those situations so that a family can identify a loved one? If they're not, let's say the family is not on scene and they've got I'll be there in a couple hours, or I'll be there tomorrow, I live out of town. How do they identify positively that, yes, this is mom?
So we do try to get an identification from a neighbor, the apartment manager, anyone, so that we don't have to show the family. But once the decedent is transported to our facility, we take a black and white photo immediately once they get there. And that's the photo that we show to the family.
Okay.
And we try our best to get them identified from that photo.
Okay.
Now, with that, if you're on a scene, and I'm just painting a picture here of a deceased in an alley, and they're decomposed, they've been deceased for 3 or 4 days, how does that identification process work? Where you may not be able to contact family, or you don't have all those avenues to do an identification. How does that process work for you all?
So we try to find if a person has a wallet and they have, a license, a phone. We go by that. And also we work closely with Detroit Police Department, latent prints. And so they come and identify all of our unknown persons. And so we're able to get within 3 hours a match back to the person that came in.
So what categorizes someone as a Jane Doe or a John Doe?
If they don't have any identification, if they're in an abandoned home, if they're in an alleyway, if no one knows them, no phone, no type of identification, they're classified as a Jane or John Doe.
Now, does the medical examiner's office, is it essentially a waiting period for somebody to call in and check to see if, I'm calling to check to see if there's anybody there around 65 years old with a snake tattoo on their left arm or something like that? Is that kind of how a lot of those cases are solved?
No, we actually, about 60% of our phone calls are people calling every few hours. Like, hey, I haven't seen my husband in 3 hours. Is he there? I haven't seen my son. He went to the store at 6 p.m. and it's 10 p.m. So we get a lot of phone calls from people that are wondering where their loved ones are. Some are a little, they shouldn't be calling because it's like, okay, the person will be home. They just went to the grocery store. It's okay. Their phone died. But we do get a lot of calls of people wondering if it's their loved ones. And we ask for, does the person have a tattoo? Do they have their hair in a certain style? And we're able to identify them that way. And then we confirm the identity by them coming down to view the picture and do a positive identification.
Puts it to rest a little bit.
Yeah. Now, is the identification at the medical examiner, is that typically protocol? And I only ask because there's been certain cases that I've had personally where the family will come in and say, when my loved one gets here from the medical examiner, can you all take a picture and provide me with that picture because the medical examiner wouldn't allow us to come in and identify? So how does that process work? Where you all will waive their, their access to identify?
Anyone is able to identify a decedent. If it's a family, a neighbor, an old church member, anyone is able to call and get a cause and manner of death, and they're also able to come and identify. We usually get waves of people. We get the first set of the family, the girlfriend, the next door neighbor, the old church members that want to come and view the pictures, and they're available to view them at any time because we keep the photos on file. So it could be a year later and they're like, oh, did such and such pass? I just want to confirm. I want to do an identification, and we allow them to come to our office and see the photos.
Even a year later?
Even years later, they come.
And that's where we're going to pause today's conversation with the science of the body. Join us next time for part 2, where we're going to do the science of the body, forensics, facts, and the final say. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe on whatever platform you're listening or watching us on. And remember to submit those questions. We are going to answer your questions and work those into our episodes here at the Repast Podcast. I would like to thank our special guest once again, Wallace Williams, Mrs. LaTasha Davidson. Thank you so much for being with us. And remember, whether you're in grief, service, or curious, we're here with you every step of the way. Join us next time on the Repast Podcast.